The Little Match Girl. In a busy city during the coldest winter anyone could remember, there lived a little girl named Rose. She had golden curls that framed her delicate face and eyes as blue as the summer sky, though few people ever looked closely enough to notice. It was New Year's Eve, and snowflakes fell thick and heavy from the gray sky, covering the cobblestone streets in a blanket of white. Rose walked barefoot through the snow, clutching bundles of matches in her small, frozen hands. More matches filled the pockets of her worn apron, which had once been white but was now tattered and gray from years of use. She had been walking since dawn, approaching every person she passed with a trembling voice. "Please, sir, would you like to buy some matches? Or, kind lady, won't you purchase a box of matches?" But it was New Year's Eve, and everyone was too busy rushing to parties, carrying gifts, or hurrying home to warm fires and festive dinners. Nobody wanted to stop for a poor little match girl. As Rose walked through the city streets, wonderful smells drifted from every direction. She passed bakeries with windows full of golden cakes decorated with sugar flowers and chocolate frosting. She saw restaurants where families sat at tables covered with white cloths, feasting on roasted meats and steaming vegetables, while candles flickered cheerfully in crystal holders. Her stomach ached with hunger. She hadn't eaten anything since the previous evening, just a crust of stale bread. But Rose kept walking, trying to ignore the pain in her belly and the aching cold in her feet. That morning, before the sun had risen, her father had woken her roughly. "Get up, you lazy girl," he had shouted, his breath reeking of alcohol. "Take these matches and don't come back until you've sold every single one. Do you hear me?" Rose's grandmother, who was very old and very sick, lay on a thin mattress in the corner of their single room. She had called out weakly, "Please, my son, it's so cold outside. Let the child stay home today. It's New Year's Eve." "Silence, old woman," Rose's father had snapped. "We need money for food and coal. The girl will sell matches, or she'll sleep in the street tonight." Rose had knelt beside her grandmother and kissed her wrinkled cheek. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll be fine. I'll sell all the matches and come home with money for medicine and food." Her grandmother had taken Rose's small hand in her own trembling one. "You're such a good child, Rose. I'm sorry you have such a cruel father. If only your dear mother were still alive." Rose had borrowed her dead mother's old slippers, far too large for her small feet, and ventured out into the freezing morning with hope in her heart. But now evening had fallen, and she hadn't sold a single match. The slippers had caused her nothing but trouble. One had fallen off when she ran across the street to avoid a speeding carriage, and it had been crushed under the horse's hooves. The other had been kicked off accidentally when some boys ran past her playing a game, and it had fallen into a muddy drainage ditch. She had tried to retrieve it, reaching down into the filthy water, but it was stuck too deep. So now Rose walked barefoot, her feet turning blue from the cold. Each step was agony, but she was more afraid of going home empty-handed than she was of the freezing snow. As darkness settled over the city, the streets grew even busier. People laughed and sang, celebrating the coming of the new year. But nobody noticed the small girl with the matches, shivering in a doorway. "Please, would anyone like to buy matches?" she called out, her voice barely a whisper now. A wealthy couple walked past, the woman wrapped in expensive furs. "Matches? No, dear, we don't need any," the woman said, not unkindly, before hurrying on. A group of children ran by, laughing and throwing snowballs. One snowball hit Rose in the shoulder, but the children didn't even notice. They were too busy playing. Rose's fingers had gone numb. She could barely feel the matches she was holding anymore. Her teeth chattered so violently that she bit her tongue and tasted blood. Finally, she found a small corner between two tall houses where the wind didn't blow quite so fiercely. She sank down, drawing her knees up to her chest and tucking her frozen feet under her thin dress. "I can't go home," she whispered to herself. Father will beat me if I don't bring money. And Grandma is so sick, she needs medicine. Tears froze on her cheeks as they fell. She looked at the matches in her hands. A thought occurred to her, a dangerous, desperate thought. If I light just one match, just one, I could warm my hands for a moment. Father would never know. I still have so many matches. One won't matter. Trembling, she took out a single match and struck it against the rough brick wall. Scratch! The match flared to life. And oh! What a miracle! The tiny flame grew and grew until it became a beautiful iron stove with brass decorations and a glowing fire visible through its door. Rose could feel warmth spreading through her frozen fingers. She held her hands closer to the stove, sighing with relief. Oh, how wonderful! How warm, she breathed. But then, poof! A gust of wind blew out the match, and the stove vanished. Rose was left in the cold, dark corner again, shivering worse than before. Her heart aching with disappointment, Rose made a decision. She would light another match, just one more. She struck the second match against the wall. This time, the wall itself seemed to melt away, becoming transparent like glass. Rose could see right through it into a beautiful house on the other side. Inside, a family was celebrating New Year's Eve around a magnificent dining table covered with a white lace cloth. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm golden light over everything. And such food! Rose's eyes widened with hunger and wonder. There were platters of roasted duck, bowls of mashed potatoes with melted butter, plates of fresh bread, dishes of cranberry sauce, and, most magnificent of all, a huge roasted goose, golden brown and crispy, sitting on a silver platter in the center of the table. As Rose watched, the family joined hands and bowed their heads in prayer, thanking God for their blessings. Rose pressed closer to the wall, wishing with all her heart that she could be inside that warm room, sitting at that table with food in her belly. Suddenly, the roasted goose seemed to come to life. It rose from its platter, wings somehow intact, and began flying toward Rose. The girl gasped in amazement as the goose flew right through the transparent wall toward her. "Are you coming to me?" Rose whispered hopefully, reaching out her hand. But just as the goose was about to reach her, the match flame flickered and died. The wall became solid brick again. The warm house, the family, and the goose all vanished in an instant. "No!" Rose cried out softly. "Please come back." She was colder and hungrier than ever now. The visions had only made her suffering worse. Rose looked up at the dark sky, watching the snow fall. Through a break in the clouds, she could see stars twinkling far above. As she watched, a bright star suddenly streaked across the sky and disappeared. "A falling star," Rose whispered. She remembered what her grandmother had once told her, when a star falls, a soul is going up to heaven. Fear gripped Rose's heart. "Grandma! Is that you? Are you dying? Oh, please, Grandma, don't leave me alone." With shaking hands, Rose pulled out another match and struck it quickly. In the golden light of the flame, a figure appeared before her, tall and beautiful, dressed in a white gown that seemed to glow with its own light. Rose recognized her immediately. "Grandma," she cried joyfully. "Oh, Grandma, you're here." Her grandmother smiled down at her with such love and warmth that Rose felt her heart might burst. The old woman looked young again, healthy and strong, with no trace of illness or pain on her face. "Yes, my darling Rose. I've come for you." "But Grandma, don't go away," Rose said desperately, remembering how the other visions had disappeared. "Please don't leave me. Take me with you. Please, Grandma, take me away from the cold and the hunger and Father's anger. Take me to where you're going." Rose's grandmother nodded slowly. "Yes, my precious child. I will take you with me. But we must hurry. Terrified that her grandmother would vanish, Rose pulled out all the remaining matches from her pockets and struck them all at once against the wall. They blazed up together, creating a light so brilliant it seemed like the sun itself had descended to that dark corner. In that magnificent light, Rose's grandmother bent down and opened her arms. Rose rushed into her embrace, and her grandmother lifted her up gently. "How do you feel now, my little Rose?" her grandmother asked softly. "Oh, Grandma," Rose said, wonder filling her voice. "I don't feel cold anymore. And I'm not hungry or afraid. I feel so light, like I could fly." "Then fly we shall, my darling." And with that, Rose's grandmother began to rise into the air, carrying Rose in her arms. They floated up and up, above the corner between the two houses, above the street, above the city with all its warm homes and cold hearts. Rose laughed with pure joy, clapping her hands as they flew higher and higher, through the falling snow, through the clouds, toward the stars themselves. "Where are we going, Grandma?" "Home, dear child. We're going home where there is no cold, no hunger, no pain, and no cruelty. Where we'll always be together." As they rose toward heaven, Rose looked down one last time at the city below. She saw the lights twinkling in windows, heard the faint sounds of celebration and laughter. But she felt no sadness, no regret. Only peace. "I'm not afraid anymore, Grandma," Rose whispered, resting her head against her grandmother's shoulder. "I know, my darling. You never have to be afraid again." When dawn broke on New Year's Day, the first person to walk down that quiet street was a baker heading to his shop. He noticed something in the corner between the two houses and stopped. "Good heavens," he murmured, moving closer. There sat little Rose, her back against the wall, surrounded by burned matches. Her eyes were closed, and on her face was the most beautiful, peaceful smile. The baker called for help, and soon a crowd had gathered. People whispered to each other, shaking their heads sadly. "Poor little thing," said an old woman. "She must have tried to warm herself with the matches." "Look at that smile on her face," said a young mother holding her child close. "It's almost as if she's dreaming something wonderful." "She was trying to sell matches all day yesterday," said a shopkeeper. "I saw her, but I was too busy to stop. I should have bought some matches from her." Rose's father came running when he heard the news, but his tears were for himself, not for his daughter. Rose's grandmother's body was found in their room, passed away peacefully in the night. The city gave Rose and her grandmother a proper burial, side by side in the cemetery on the hill. Those who came to the funeral said they had never seen a dead child look so happy, as if she had gone somewhere beautiful. And perhaps she had. For on that cold New Year's Eve, while the city celebrated below, Rose and her grandmother had gone home together, to a place where little girls never have to sell matches in the snow, where there is always warmth and love, and where cruel fathers can never reach. They say that on New Year's Eve, if you look very carefully at the stars, you might see two of them shining more brightly than the rest, a grandmother and her granddaughter, together forever, watching over all the lonely children of the world.